This video is about Bill Browder's book, Red Notice. I was a bit hesitant to read this book because it is merely one person's biographical story about doing business in Russia, and it reads more like a novel than political science. I'm largely doing this channel to learn more about political science, so naturally, I thought this might not be too helpful. At the start, Browder, seemed to be someone whose observations were largely based on stereotypes. He talked about people being so poor in Poland that they needed horses, and he paints a somewhat similar picture of Russia. However, just because something is a stereotype and a superficial observation does not make it not true. By the end of the book, I realized that Bill Browder's story was really emblematic of many issues in Russia's post-Soviet kleptocracy. The things that happened to him happened to many others who are afraid to speak out, which is why his novel is not only informative, but also testimonial. By the end of the book, I didn't regret reading it at all. When Bill Browder does what Bill Browder does is at the start of his book is he chronicalizes his life leading up to his starting the hedge fund, the Hermitage Foundation in Russia. He describes the financial investments he made while working with BCG, his rough time in boarding school, and the impact that his communist grandfather had on him as a capitalist. The story is interesting because he essentially gives the details of how many businesses were stolen by oligarchs in the 90s and 2000s. If you didn't know what a Russian raid or rederstvo was, you will by the end of this book. If you thought Russia's criminal justice system was based on genuine testimonies, your illusions will be rightfully shattered. Perhaps the most important aspect by Browder's own testimony is that you will know who Sergei Magnitsky was, what the Magnitsky Act is, and why it matters. Another book that this book reminds me of is Maya McQuillan's Deputy Mayor Putin, which is available in a dramatized form on Audible. Both books, while about two very different people, give clear biographical examples of how money and ownership lacks any sort of real, reliable legitimacy in Russia. In the end, both books explain how crime rules Russia and how devastated their economy was in the late 90s. In the entirety of the 90s. Now, with Browder's book, there are some things I would take with a grain of salt. He claims he was able to buy Gazprom's database, Russia's largest Gazprom, from a kid selling a database on the street. The sequel, Browder's freezing order, explains how this is actually possible, that he could buy a database. But there are things like this that sound a little bit extraordinary here and there. This is just my personal feelings after initially reading Browder's book, and I know that there are some counter claims made against him. But whatever bad things you can say about Browder, I think it's worth pointing out that he's spot on his criticisms of Russian oligarchs. So just because the Russian oligarchs may have some complaints about how he started his hedge fund, I haven't looked into any of these criticisms. That doesn't mean that Browder isn't correct in his criticisms of the oligarchs. None of any criticisms directed towards him are to say that what he exposes in Russia was not real. I do recommend this book for those who want to learn more about oligarchs and kleptocracy in Russia. While it's one thing to hear that Russia is controlled by oligarchs, it's another thing to hear someone explain what this entails and how this can be damaging to the average person. If you feel I've misrepresented Browder or factually misspoke, please feel free to respond. If you have anything to comment, feel free to go ahead and comment. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. If not, that's cool too. Take care.